Hey guys, Nick here. Welcome to the first video of this course. I'm super excited to be here and I hope you are as well. To begin developing Android apps, you're going to first need to download two pieces of software. The first is Android Studio, the official IDE for Android. What's that mean? An IDE stands for an integrated development environment, which is essentially a piece of software that gives you a place to write your code and provides you with a bunch of cool tools to help you along the way. You're also going to need to install the Java Development Kit, which will allow you to use the language that Android apps are written in, Java. So to do that, go to this website. If you want to just look it up, you can go JDK8 and click the first link that pops up. You're going to want to go accept the license agreement. If you have a Mac, you can just click this download link, but if you have a Windows machine, you're going to need to find out whether you have an 86-bit or a 64-bit. And the way to do this is to go to this PC, right-click, go to Properties, and see right here, it says I have a 64-bit, so I'm going to click the 64-bit download. Now I've already installed this, so there's no sense in redoing it, but it's a fairly simple and standard install wizard, so you'll just click the download button and follow that. After that, go back to the Android Studio website and click the Download Android Studio button. Now I have Windows and it automatically senses what kind of machine you have, so you're good there. You can read these if you want to, but does anyone really? There's no use in it. Now this can take some time depending upon what kind of machine you have, so I'm just going to pause this here for a little while. Alright, excellent. So when that's finished downloading, you're going to go ahead and click on that, and it should open up the install wizard. It's going to have a bunch of stuff to download, so again, you're just going to need to bear with it here and wait for it to do everything. It seems like a good time to point out that to use Android Studio and develop Android apps in general, you're going to need to have a decent computer with at least 8 gigabytes of RAM. So if you don't have that, you're going to need to go out and purchase some extra RAM, and the people at whatever store you go to should be able to help you install that to your computer. So, as you see, you should be getting a box that looks like this. Now, I have Android Studio pre-installed, so it has to go here and uninstall the last version, but this is what you guys should get. Just follow through this, click all the next buttons, install, and this might take a minute or two, so just hang out for a second. Alright, there we go. Just click next and start Android Studio. Now this is as far as we're going to go in this video, and if you've made it this far, congrats, you're on your first step to becoming a real Android developer. If you haven't made it to this screen, then you must have run into some issue along the way. Feel free to ask me questions in the comments, and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. Thanks guys, see you in the next video. After creating your project, you should be given a screen that looks like this. What this is the drag and drop editor for your XML, which, as I said before, is how you're going to position and place all the different UI elements that your user sees in your apps. So if you go to the text portion over here, you'll see what real XML looks like. Now, in a world where we have drag and drop and graphical editors like this, you're not really going to need to concern yourself with writing blank XML, but it's good to know what it looks like. So this is a text view. This is just what you put on if you want to display some text on the screen. And I'm going to go ahead and show you a few other UI elements that you're going to be using throughout your apps. Let's go ahead and drop in a button. I mean, you guys have probably seen a lot of these before, so you know what they do. Over here, you can go ahead and edit a few of the button's characteristics. You can make the text bold on it. You can change what the text says. Let's just make this little guy say hi. You can change the font, text size, everything. So it's essentially going to be the same as that for basically every other UI element. You guys can go ahead and play with that if you want to, but throughout the rest of this course, I'm going to be introducing new UI elements as we need them, but just go ahead and mess around with that. For the purposes of learning some basic Java, we're going to be using an online tool called jdoodle.com. You can access that by either typing in this link at the top or just Googling it. When you open up the page, you'll see it's giving you some basic code here, and you're probably wondering what any of this means. Don't worry, you'll be cool with it in a second. So, before you can write any programs, you're going to need to know about some basic building blocks of any programming language. One of those are variables. In Java, variables are declared like this. This is just the basic code they give you on JDoodle. Now, for Java to know what type of variable you're declaring, you need to state its type. There's a bunch of different types, such as integers, doubles, characters, strings, etc., but we're not really going to need all of them right now. For the purposes of declaring numbers, let's start with integers. Now, you can probably figure out what all this means, but I'm just going to walk you through each part of it. You use the int keyword to declare an integer. Then you give it a name. To assign it to a value, you use a single equals sign, and then you put an integer afterward. It's important to note that you cannot put any decimals after, because then it would not be an integer, and the program won't work. Do the same thing with y to declare it to 25, and z to declare it to the sum of x and y. Note that when you're referring to a variable later in a program after declaring it, you don't use the constructor, the keyword, anymore. Let's go ahead and print out the value of z to see how this works. And see there, it prints out the sum. You can also multiply, divide, subtract, do whatever you want. Let's see how you can use decimal numbers now. To do that, you need the double keyword. And you're going to want to change 10 to a double, which is a number with numbers on both sides of the decimal point. So we're going to multiply those together and then print out the value. Great. You're probably wondering, what if I don't want to use numbers? What if I need text in my app? To do that, you'd use the string keyword. And just remember, to close every line in Java, you need a semicolon. Let's go ahead and print out my string. And there you go. If you have any questions about variables, please ask me in the comments, but for now, that's all you need to know. So in this video, we'll be starting a new Android Studio project and taking a look at all the different facets of the IDE and see how everything works. So to start a new project, just click the Start a New Android Studio Project button and wait for everything to initialize. So you don't really have to do anything with company domain unless you do have one that you want to put in. For now, just use the example.com. This first application is just going to be titled Test Application. That's what we're going to be working in as you guys learn to program and just about Android in general. You don't really need to worry about C++ support or Kotlin, even though you can use those languages to make Android apps, because for the purposes of this course, we're going to be using Java. Here, you can choose to target different Android operating systems. If you go up to the very newest one, Android 8 Oreo, you're not going to be able to target that many devices because not all devices have updated to that. So you're going to want to go back to where you can target somewhere in the 90 to 100% range. So I'm going to go with one before that, ice cream sandwich. That'll reach 100% of devices. And for this purpose, just pick an empty activity. So when that finally builds, you should get something that looks like this. It'll have two files opened up for you already. The main activity.java, which is where you write the majority of your Java code, and activity_main.xml. That's still waiting to finish, but I'm going to take you through what each of these files do. So if you go into your app folder over here, you'll see manifest, Java, and res. In manifest, you have your Android manifest.xml, which just has some basic application info, like what kind of theme you want to have, the app name. If you go into Java in the first one, this is going to have all your Java code. We'll get into what Java is and how to use it later, but just know that this is where you'll be writing all your code. Over here is where you have all the stuff that's going to make up your application's user interface. Images, layouts, etc., all that good stuff. So under layouts is where you have your XML folders. Still building, but essentially we're going to use XML to position different UI items on the screen and make everything that the user sees. That's it for this video. See you guys next time. Sometimes in programming, you'll need to have a repeated action. And to do that, you're going to need loops. In Java, the main two types of loops are called for loops and while loops, and they're implemented as follows. To write a for loop, the syntax is like this. Now I'm going to explain what each part of this is. So, the loop has three sections. The first section runs once we enter the loop. That gives the baseline for the index of the loop. The second section is the gatekeeper, right here. If it returns true, we run the statements in the loop. If it returns false, we exit the loop and move on to whatever the next part of the program is. The third section is the final statement that will run every time the loop runs. So in the case we have just seen, the loop will run 3 times. Here's the order of the commands. First, it sets the integer I to 0. Then it checks if I is less than 3. Then upon completion of the loop, it adds 1 to I. So I will run 3 times, and then once it checks if it's less than 3 and if it's not less than 3, the loop will stop. So let's try this. And as you'll see, it printed 3 times. Now, another type of extremely useful loop in Java is the while loop. They can basically be used interchangeably, but sometimes it's easier to use one over the other. So a while loop's syntax is like this. And by the way, this is how you use comments in Java. 2 backslashes and then whatever you want to comment. That doesn't get run by the computer. That's just for the programmer to see. Oh, and also, I think I may have forgotten to mention earlier, if you have an integer or any type of variable and you use the ++ operator on it, that increases its value by 1. So we're going to do the same thing we just did, but with a while loop. And now, because it's different than a for loop in that you don't declare all the index stuff in the constructor here, you have to add to I, or whatever you're using as the index. In this case, I called it index, inside the loop itself. as you'll see, it did the exact same thing as the last loop. So, in essence, those are all the types of loops you're going to need for the purposes of this course and most of Java. If you have any questions, as always, ask me in the comments. See you in the next video. So, the last big Java concept we're going to be looking at for now are functions. What functions allow you to do is essentially reuse a piece of code in different places, so you don't have to rewrite it. That saves a lot of memory and is just makes programming so much easier for you. So this is how functions work. They take a couple declarative statements, such as public, static, void, etc. So public means that it can be accessed from anywhere in this class. Don't worry about what classes are for right now. That's not important. Static means that it belongs to the main class. Void means that it doesn't return a value. And for now, you really only need to worry about the keyword that goes right before the name. So that can either be void or a data type. When a function is void like this, that means it doesn't return anything. I'll show you what that means right now. So let's make a function that returns an integer. And to do that, it has to take an integer as an argument. You don't have to declare this anywhere. This is specific to the function, so it just goes in here. Now, when this value gets passed to the function, you use it inside the function with this variable name. And as we remember, this just adds 1 to whatever my int is. And then because we chose integer as the value, as the type it's going to return, we have to return an integer. Now, with this, because it returns an integer, you can call that as a value and use it whenever you use this function. So the way you do that is like this. Let's get rid of all this stuff. So we can go and we're going to pass the value 4 to it. Let's execute this and see how it goes. And as you can see, it returned 5. Now you may still be a little confused about how this works, so I'm just going to do a couple more examples just to show you what functions are. So let's see what happens if I make this void. And as I've stated, void means that it's not supposed to return anything. See, you get an error. You can't return something when the function is listed as void. Let's make it a string, see how that works. And because of that, we're going to have to change the argument to string. And just so you know, you can take multiple arguments. I'll show you that in a second. This is a good time to show you how string concatenation works. So, string concatenation is essentially just pasting a couple strings together to make a different one. So, we're going to do this now. My string, which is the string that the user passed right here. That's what will be passed in when they call the function. So what this is going to do is going to take whatever is passed to this function, whatever string it is, and add the word hi to it, or a space and then hi. And then we're going to return my string. Now let's change the name of this to return string now. Let's execute this and see how it works. Oh, sorry, my bad here. I guess I accidentally tried to cast this to an int, so make sure all your data types match up with each other. As you can see, it adds the word hi onto it. Now, if you have a void function, you can still use it to perform actions, but you won't be able to assign anything to what's returned from it. It'll just be something like this. Remember, you can't have any arguments like that when it's void. Or you can have arguments, nothing's going to get returned from it. So let's go. We just have to do all the printing or whatever you want to do inside that particular function if it's void. We're going to call that from the main function, which runs whenever the program is run. When you execute that, it prints the same stuff out, but it does it from the function. So that's a nice little introduction to functions for you guys. After this, we're going to start getting into more Android-specific things, such as displaying stuff on the screen, changing stuff on the screen, showing messages, and a bunch of other cool stuff. And then after that, we'll get into our final project. So in this last Java video, we're going to go over if-else and operators. Often in programming, you're going to need to use conditional statements to run a particular bit of code only if something is true or false. And to do that, you're going to need if and else. I'll show you how that works. So the if statement is the most basic of all control flow statements. It tells your program to execute a certain section of code only if a particular test evaluates to true. For example, let's create two variables, or I guess we can use the ones they provided for us. And you guys probably all know what this is. This just tests if x is less than y. And while we're here, let's go over all the other operators like that. There's less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and equal to. Now it's important to note that when you're testing for equality and not assigning a variable, you have to use the double equals sign. Otherwise your program won't work. So let's go back here, test if x is less than y, and then what we're going to do if it is. What we're doing here, the program is going to check if the variable x is less than the variable y, and if it is, it's going to print out x is less than y. And you'll see it is. But what if this evaluated to false? What if it wasn't true? Let's see what happens. As you can see, nothing happens. This is where the else statement comes in. The else statement is used to execute actions if an if statement evaluates to false. As you can see, x is not less than y was printed out. Now, this is a basic control flow structure, but sometimes you're going to have to test for multiple true statements, not just one. And you'll do that like this, using an else if statement. And then you're always going to want to have an else to test for all of your possible scenarios. So we're going to want to go ahead and set x and y to the same value so that we can see how our else if statement works. Oops, forgot a little semicolon there. As you can see, it printed out x is equal to y. We should be using all of these in our final project, and I can't wait to get started. The first thing you're going to need to do to get working on our app is to go to Android Studio and create a new project. If you're already open in Android Studio, you can go to File, New, and then New Project, and just follow the wizard to create all the new prerequisites for it. We're going to call this Simple Timer, or whatever you want really, it doesn't matter. Again, like we discussed earlier, you're going to want to try to target as many devices as you can, but for our purposes right now, you can really choose whatever you want under SDK. You're going to want to go with a basic activity instead of an empty, because we're going to be using this little floating action button down here. Great, now that this is built, we're going to start going through some of the basic components we're going to be using to build our app. In this program, we're going to be needing text views to display the numbers, and this little button down here called a floating action button. We'll get to that in a minute though. So, one of the main things you need to do in Android with UI elements like this is edit them programmatically from Java. So, to do that, you need to give it an ID, and as you can see, it's already ID'd as text view. When you want to refer to this in your Java code, you do it like so. First, you have to state the type of UI element it is, in this case, text view. Give it a name. And now, this is just a different type of variable, so sometimes you have to import stuff to be able to use it. As you can see, it brings in all the components for text views so you can use it in your programs. You then have to cast it to a text view, which is essentially just letting the program know again that what you're calling is a text view. And then you use a method or function called findViewById. This, like many other functions, is built into Android. And then to refer to your view, you use this following: resources, or R, and that's it. Now, throughout this program, you can refer to text view. So, this method that we're working in right now is called onCreate. It's kind of like the main activity we were using in JDoodle. So, this onCreate method, all the code in here is going to get run as soon as the program or app opens. So as you can see right now, go back to your content main. This text view just says text view. Let's make it a little bit bigger so we can see it. So just to show you how this works, let's change the text whenever the app's opened up. And now if you run your app using the emulator like this, I've already set this up, but if you want to create a new virtual device, you do this. And you just go up here, click the hardware specifications you want, and finish. And like that, you'll have a new virtual device to run your apps on. You can also use a physical device, but for the purposes of what we're doing in this course, a virtual device is going to be fine. So then, you're going to want to go ahead, click on whatever emulator you're using, and run your app. This might take a minute to start up, so I'm just going to pause the video and wait. Now that the app finished building, you can see that the text "Hello World" popped up. While we're here, I'm also going to show you how to display messages to the user, like we're going to be doing in our app. So one of the most convenient ways to show messages or give instructions to users in Android is by using what's called a toast. If you have an Android phone, you've definitely seen these before. They're just little messages that pop up and give extra information about whatever's going on. To make one, you do this. And for context, you don't really need to worry about that right now. Just write get application context. Then you're going to want to put the message you want to display. And then after that, either short or long, depending upon the length you want this toast. I want this to be a short one, so you go length short. And then after that, you have to tell it to show the toast. So this is going to run right as the app is built. What I did here, instead of clicking on this is instant run. That just runs the application with the changes I made. So if you saw that right there, it said welcome to my first app. That's what a toast is, and that's how you make them. So we're going to keep building the application in the next videos. Alright guys, so before we officially get started, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a preview of what you're going to be building throughout the course. So the final project is going to be a grocery list / notes app. The way it works is like this. When you open the app for the first time, you're given an example note. To delete it, you long press on it, then click the yes button. To add a new note, click the big plus button. It takes you to a new activity. Type in your new note or item. Let's say get milk. Click the check button to finalize the note and go back to the main activity. And that's it. I know a lot of this seems like pretty foreign to you guys right now. You probably don't know how a lot of it works, but throughout the course you're going to learn a lot about Android and how to make an app like this. So you'll probably notice how in the last video when you ran your app, the text view jumped to the top left corner. And we're going to do something very simple to fix that. So when you go to your content main.xml, go to the text section, and you'll see here something called a constraint layout is built in. A much easier way to position your UI elements on the screen is to use something called a relative layout, which lets you position them relative to each other or to the screen. So you just go ahead and change this to relative layout. And then go back to design, and you can drag your text view back to the center of the screen. And as you'll see, when you run the app, it's going to stay there. Now while that's building, I also want to talk about this little thing down here, the floating action button. You can't access it from content main. You'll have to go over to your activity main.xml to open it up. Alright, and as you can see here, when the app ran, Hello World stayed in the very center. Now with this floating action button, it has a built-in action already, just to show you how it works. When you click on it, it says replace with your own action. Now as I said, you have to go into your activity main.xml to access that. When you do, go ahead and click on it. Since we're going to be making a stopwatch app, we don't want the little mail icon there. To change its source, go here to the floating action button source compact. Click on the three little dots next to drawable, and it should open up a menu with a bunch of different button types to choose from. Once you're there, you can search for the play button. Just click on that, and as you can see, it'll put the play button in there. I think it's better to have it a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to go up here and change the width and height of it. Now, you're going to need to use density pixels for the units. That's just another term for the units you want the UI element to be. So let's try 50 by 50. That's a little bit bigger. Let's make it a little bit larger actually. That's nice. Easy to click on the screen, very easy for the user to see. So we're going to now talk about editing the action of this button. Go ahead and go back to your main activity.java, and this is where it's referred to, and this is the snack bar that makes its action. Now we're going to be starting the timer when we click this button, so let's just work on changing this to your own action. Go ahead and delete all this snack bar stuff. So where's this? Yeah, right here. And let's put your toast.make text inside there, so that whenever you click this button, the toast you made in the first video of this will be made. Just go ahead and run that. So now that the app is rebuilt, you'll see this button's a lot bigger and now has a play symbol instead of mail. And when you click on that, your toast gets made right there. In the next video, we're going to talk about starting the timer using something called a handler, and that'll be the final one for this app. You guys are almost there. Keep at it. Okay, so for the next part of our Java tutorial, we're going to start looking into what objects are, as well as classes. So if we consider the real world, we can find many objects around us. Cars, dogs, humans, etc. All these objects have a state and a behavior. For instance, if we think about a dog, its state is its name, breed, color. Essentially, it's adjectives that can describe it. Its behavior is barking, running, wagging its tail, all those types of things. If you compare a software object with a real-world object, they have very similar characteristics. Software objects also have a state and a behavior. The software object's state is stored in fields, and its behavior is shown via methods. So in software development, methods operate on the internal state of an object, and the object-to-object communication is done via methods. A class in Java, for instance my class, is a blueprint from which individual objects are created. I'm going to show you a better example of a class right now. So let's just delete all this and create a dog class. If you guys aren't understanding everything about this right now, don't worry. This is one of the things that's better shown by just watching and programming along. So let's create class dog. So we're going to give it a few adjectives or states. We'll go So those are all the adjectives or states that are going to be used to describe the dog. We're going to be able to pass different values to that so we can give it different attributes. I had to go fix my touchpad there. The sensitivity was way down. I was messing with the cursor. So now let's give it a few behaviors, essentially things that the dog can do. These methods aren't going to return anything, so we're going to give them the return type of void. What else do we want it to do? We want it to be able to eat, and let's make it sleep too. So a class can contain any of the following variable types. Local variables, which are defined inside methods, constructors, or blocks. These variables will be declared and then initialized within the method, and the variable will be destroyed when the method is completed. Instance variables, which are variables within a class, but outside any method. These variables are initialized when the class is instantiated. Instance variables can be accessed from inside any method, constructor, or block of that particular class. And finally, class variables, which are variables declared within a class outside any method with the static keyword, which means they're not going to change. So, when talking about classes, one of the most important subtopics would be constructors. Every class has a constructor. If we don't want to explicitly write a constructor for the class, the Java compiler will build a default one for that class. Each time a new object is created, at least one constructor will be invoked. The main rule of constructors is that they should have the same name as a class. A class can have more than one constructor as well. Let's delete all this and show you an example of a constructor. Let's make it a puppy this time. This is the constructor here. Let's give it a name. This constructor only has one parameter, as you can see here, name. So now I'm going to show you how to create an object from a class. So to do this, you're probably going to want to do something when the user creates a class, something with this name thing, name variable. So let's just have the program print out the name when the object is created. So we're going to go, again, don't worry about this system.out, that print line stuff. This is just Java specific that you're really not going to need for Android right now. This is a good time to bring up string concatenation. So if you want to add a variable onto a string, this is how you do it. You put in whatever string you want to print out, put a space in there if you need to, then you can just use a plus sign in the variable. The variable does have to be of type string though. Always remember your semicolons with Java. So let's go ahead and create the main function that's going to be run when the program starts. So we're going to go just remember in Java, this is how the main function always starts out. Nothing really to worry about. So the following statement is going to create a new object from the puppy class. Let's call it, and when you're creating a new object variable, instead of using a type of int or string, float, etc., whatever you want, the type of the variable is going to be the object that you created. So you're going to be creating a new variable of type puppy. And you write the word new, and then the name of the class again. And then there's one parameter, it's name. So let's give the puppy a name. Let's call it Bob. So when we go ahead and execute this program, pup's name is Bob. And now you can also use more parameters for this. You can give it as many as you want. Let's give it another parameter called breed. And to add more variables, you just add a comma outside the quotation marks and put in the next parameter. Let's make this puppy a boxer. That's what my dog is, so. There you go. Pup's name is Bob, breed is Boxer. So that's essentially a basic overview of classes for you guys. But we're going to do one more thing here and show you guys how to access instance variables and really what instance variables are. So now this is a typo, I don't even really need this thing up here. Let's go ahead and create variable age. Pup age. And that's going to just be declared. It's not going to be assigned a value right now because that's something that hypothetically the user would be able to assign. So we can leave the pup's name and breed thing here, but we're going to need to create another method inside the class puppy up here that will be able to assign the age. So we're going to go public void set age. We're going to be taking an integer as a parameter because age will be just an integer number. And we're going to set the variable pup age to age right here. And now keep in mind that this age variable will not be able to be accessed from outside this method. It's an instance variable. So here we go. So now whenever you access pup age from other places in the program, it will be equal to whatever set age is. So we're going to go down here and we're going to give the puppy an age and access it. It's basically it won't be really anything foreign to you guys, just another way to access variables. So we're going to go, we already called new pup, so we're going to go new pup dot set age, and let's give it an age of 1 because, you know, it's a new puppy. It can be 1. And now we're going to print that out. So now to access this variable, you're going to refer to the instance of the class you called, its name. So new pup, then dot pup age. Okay? Now let's just finish off this sentence. See if this works. Oh, missed a space there. Pup is, there we go. Alright, so there you go, guys. That's basically a working knowledge of classes for you right there. That's going to be an aspect of Java that's very useful for you guys, and for the matter of any programming or any programming language you do throughout your careers. Alright, so to make the app I just demoed, we're going to need to make a new project. So you go to File, New Project. Let's call this one List App. Not very imaginative, I know, but it describes what the app's going to be doing. Just click all the default settings, and our main screen is going to have a big plus button on it, so you're going to want to click Basic Activity. Main Activity, and just wait for it to finish loading. Great, so now that the app's finished building, the first thing we're going to need to do is design the UI. So, as you saw by the app demo, the main screen is going to have a floating action button, this guy right here, and a list view. The edit note screen is just going to have a text view and another floating action button. So let's go ahead and make that. We're going to delete the default hello world, go to containers, and drag in a nice list view. Put that in the middle of the screen, and it takes everything up. Now go to your constraints over here and make them all 0 so that the list view can fill up the entire screen. Otherwise it's going to have spaces on each side and it's just not going to look right. So To edit the floating action button, you have to go to activity main.xml. Let's make this guy a little bigger. I like it at 60 density independent pixels, so now the plus icon you saw doesn't come standard in the Android Studio drawables, so we're going to need to go to Bitmap, right click on that, go to new, and then image asset. So that'll bring up this little wizard here. Go ahead and click on action bar and tab icons, clip art, and then you can just search for plus. It's not that, it's add. So double click on the add, or then go to that. So we're going to want this to be completely white. So go to custom color, and for the hex code for an entirely white icon is 6F. So that's just completely white. Choose, and then do whatever you want with the padding, whatever you think looks nice. Let's make this called IC add. Finish that, and then we can change this little mail icon to the add icon that we want. It's not going to do that for me. I guess I'm going to have to go click on this and search for it. So when that loads, you can go ahead and search for IC_add. Click OK, and then you'll have a nice little add button there. Now, it's hard to make your own palette, hard to know what conforms to material design standards and also looks nice. So for palette making, I like to use a website called Material Palette. You click on a couple colors that you like and it makes the palette for you. So I'm just going to drag this in over here. So for this app, I liked the green and light green color scheme. You guys can do whatever you want, but that's what I'm going to go with for this one. Light green, green. Now this will give you all your colors that you can use in your app. So in your app, if you want to edit all the colors, go to Values, Colors, and you see you'll have your primary dark and accent color. Just go ahead and copy these from your material palette, and you will you'll be able to use those in your app. Let's see. Automatically copies to clipboard. Actually, I'm gonna drag this screen over to my other monitor so it's easier to get the colors. So it's my dark primary. Got my primary. And this is my accent. Now, another really nice thing about Android Studio is that it shows you little previews of the colors on the sides there. In some cases, you also have to go to your manifest and edit the colors. But in this case, no. So, see now in activity main, it's already edited all the colors for me here. It's the color values are done like this so that you can just have several colors that you use throughout the app, and you don't have to keep going back and forth and hard coding them all in every case you need to use them. So now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and make the other activity. So to do that, go to Java, New, Activity, and we only need one. We need another floating action button on this. So we're going to go to Basic Activity again. Let's call this one Edit Note. Let's make the title of it Edit Your Note. Now we want to have a little back button so that you can go back to the main activity. You can either do it that way, or if you just want to use the floating action button to make the users go back to the main activity, you can do that. If you want to have a back button in the top left corner, like this, you can use hierarchical parent. Just to show you guys, I'm going to do that, just to have it as an option for users. So you click main activity, and now automatically, when the user clicks on the top left button, it'll bring them back to the main activity. I'm going to click finish there. It often takes a second to make a new activity since it's adding a completely different module to the app. So you're going to want to go into here. For consistency's sake, we want to make both the floating action buttons the same size. And because we already put in all the colors, it's going to make them automatically the same color. Great, now that that's finished building, you can see in your edit node.java, it already has the floating action bar code in there. We'll make use of that in a little bit. Right now, go to your activity edit note, click on the floating action bar, and again change the size to 60 dp, or whatever you think looks good. I like 60. It may look kind of big now, but when you actually run the app on most devices, it looks pretty nice. So you're going to need to include a new drawable for the checkbox. So go to mipmap, you guys have already done this once, and something like this only really takes one try to do. So great. Now we're going to do the same thing. Go over to where it has the drawable for the little email sign. Click on the 3 dots, the ellipsis. Then you're going to want to go search for IC_check. Click OK, and you'll have your check button there. The other part you're going to need for editing the note is an edit text. So go in here, click drag the multi-line text in, and put it somewhere near the top. Don't know exactly where that went, so I'm going to drag it in again. Android Studio is being kind of fickle right now. Oh, that's my bad. You can't do that in the activity.xml. It has to be in the content main.xml or content edit note.xml. So go to text again, drag in your multi-line text, and plop it right there at the top left. Let's make it reach all the way to the end. Okay, not like that. Change the margin to 0, and the left margin to 0 as well. That puts it straight in the middle. Now go to layout width, click on match constraint, and you're good. So that's essentially all the design work we're going to have to do aside from editing IDs, but we'll get to that in the more programming section of this app. Great. So one of the main things we're going to need to do in our app is save data permanently because, it's a notes app. So a big portion of it is going to be saving the notes to the device storage. So when it comes to doing this with Android, there are a number of different possibilities you have available. But the most basic and straightforward one is called shared preferences. What shared preferences allows us to do is store variables in a key value pair. So how that works is like this. You need to create a new shared preferences object. Let's just indent this guy properly. So let's take this out of the floating action button, put it just straight in the main activity. We're going to call it shared preferences. And now you have to declare it with the this keyword. What the this keyword does is tells the object what the context is. That essentially tells new objects and variables where they are in the application. It's a little complex and a little wonky to use at first, but It's one of those things that just after using it more, you get the hang of what needs to be used as the context. Now, you need to name it. So I'm going to use my package name. I'm just going to copy that from up here. Yours is probably going to be different. So don't use the same thing, just copy your own package. And now you need to give it a mode. The mode basically just tells the app, or tells the shared preferences, if it's going to be private to your app or if it can be accessed through anything. I want it to be private, so I'm going to give it the mode private. Now to save something to that, you have to use something called putString. That's used like this. First have to edit the shared preferences, then putString. Now you can see you also have putString set, put boolean, float, int, long. Those are just for different variable types. We're going to be using putString set in our app because we're going to want to store a list of things. I'm going to call it name, and then I'm going to put my name, Nick. Apply. So then to retrieve that, you go like this. You can just declare a variable. You have to give the key that you want to get. In this case, it's name. And then just put a blank string because it's going to get populated with whatever the value of name is anyway. Now to get that, I'm just going to log it out, so whenever we run the app, it's going to show us that. Now, I ran a test of this earlier, so I can assure that it works, and when I ran the app, this is what it retrieved to me. So I just searched for my name, Nick, and it printed out name, Nick. It has the extra semicolon. An extra colon there because I put an extra colon in the first test. I had it like that right here. So another main part of our app is going to be shifting from activity to activity, from main activity to edit note, and so forth. So to do that, I've deleted all the boilerplate code from the floating action button, and I'm going to show you how to switch from activity to activity with something called an intent. And that works like so. I'm going to call it intent. New intent. And you have to give it the context again. And then you have to give it the end activity. So essentially, if you're in main activity and you want to go to edit note, you have to put edit note.class. That's very important. .class, not .java. Now you see we have a little error here, probably wondering what that is. And that's because when I put the this keyword in as the context, that is referring to this function right here, the floating action button. What we need to do is get the application context. So we do that like this. Most of the time, if the this keyword doesn't work, it's going to be get application context. Now, to shift to the other activity using an intent, you call it like this. Start activity, intent. Now we're going to go ahead and run that app. I'm using instant run right here because instead of compiling the entire app, it only runs through the changes, leading to shorter build times and less use of machine resources. Pull this up here, apply changes or started activity. Let's click that. And as you can see, it takes us to edit your note. Alright, so this is where we are in our list app right now. The app opens up and you have a blank screen with the floating action button. You click the button and it takes you to the other intent, or to the other activity with an intent that has an edit text and a button with no action. So the first thing we're going to need to do to start adding functionality to our app is create a list for the notes to be stored in. That's done like this. we're going to go ahead and create a new array list of strings. Call it notes. Set that equal to a new array list. Not that. Well, it's all been imported for us. So then, in our onCreate, actually we can go ahead and delete all this shared preferences stuff right now. This was just for testing in one of the last videos. So then in our onCreate, we're going to make a new list view. We're going to go back to our content main.xml, and we're going to check what the ID on that list view is. If it's nothing, then we're going to just set it to list view. To main activity. Great. And now we have new list view set up. So we're going to add an example note to the notes array list. And create an array adapter for the list view so that we're able to add all of the notes and list items into the list view. That's just a default styling that comes built in with Android for the list. Just use that or any of the other ones that you think looks nice. And then we have to pass the data set that's going to go into the list view. That's going to be notes. Then we take our list view and set the adapter to array adapter. So now if we go ahead and run this, just use instant run. If we go ahead and run this, we should see a new list, or the list that will be populated with example note right here. So now that it's run, you see that our list view, which is actually shifted a little bit too far down, has been loaded with a note. Let's call it example note. So now that that's been created, we need to set a listener so that when a user clicks on the note, it transitions them to the other activity where they can then edit it, or delete it, or change whatever they want to do. So that's done like this. ListView.setOnItem click listener. That'll be new adapter view. See, it already puts in all the code for you. Some nice boilerplate code there. And now, you don't really have to worry about many of these variables, except this one. This is the position in the list of the item that was clicked. So we're just going to change this to position. In position, there we go. So we want to go to the other activity when this is clicked. So we do it like this. Remember, the other class is called editNote.class. And we're going to have to put a little extra bit of information. In this case, it will be the position of the node ID. That is done like this. You intend to put extra, give it a tag, so I'm going to call it node ID. That's what's going to be used to identify our note in the other activity, and give it position. And we're going to start the activity. Great. In the other activity, we're going to want to set the value of the text field to whatever the value of this note was. So, well, first we're going to need to give the edit text an ID. So go over to content edit note.xml, find your edit text. Alright, it's called edit text already, great. So in the onCreate of your edit note, you're going to want to do this. Create a new edit text. Then you're going to need to get the intent that started this one, and that's done like this. I'm going to call this I instead of intent just for brevity's sake. I'm going to make a global variable called note ID as well. And this is how you get something that was passed to the intent, like this. If you see over here in main activity, where you set intent.put extra, to get that extra bit of information, you use getExtra, and you have to specify the data type. Now this is called note ID, and the default value is going to be -1. Because it's never going to be -1 in the list, so this is how we'll know if nothing was passed over and there was some kind of error. So if the value is not -1, meaning something was passed over, we're going to want to set the value of edit text, this guy right here. Emulator's being a little laggy, but the edit text that pops up in the next activity, we're going to want to set that to the value of the note. Yeah, this right here. So do that like this. It's not equal to -1. I'm going to call this string filler text. Now you see we have a little error here when getting notes from main activity. That's because if you want to access variables from other activities, they have to be static. So we're going to go ahead and make notes static. Static just means that it's not going to change throughout the program. So you see it moved the declaration of notes up here and named it as static. We're going to go and set the value of the edit text to filler text. You know, save a line, we could just take all this stuff and move it down into the set text field, but I think it looks better this way. So now, when you run your app, see I already ran a test here. When you run the app, you'll be able to click on a note, and when it pops up, you'll be able to edit it, add text and whatnot, but you'll see when you go back to your main activity, another note is added. We'll sort that out later, I'm not too worried about it right now. But being able to edit notes is not much good if you can't save them. So what we're going to need to do is save all the notes. To do that, we need to add a text watcher to the edit text. I think the best way to do this is when the user types automatically save, so that's what I'm going to do. The context is going to be this because it's for this activity. You see we have a little error here. We need to make edit note implement Android text.textWatcher, and that'll give us a couple handy methods that will come in very good use. Now as you see, we have before text changed, on text changed, and after text changed. I think the most useful here is going to be on text change, so that's the one we're going to do most of our logic in. What we're going to need to do here is update the notes dataset with the new value of it. So we're going to go up here, copy this code just for simplicity's sake. But now instead of getting node ID, we are going to be setting it. So we go like this. This is what we're going to be setting, and then what are we going to be setting it to is the char sequence, which is the new value of edit text. We get that with string.value of char sequence. And now all we need to do is update the array adapter. Let it know that the data set has been changed, like this. It's going to have to be static 2 in a second. Oh, it's not letting me do that. Alright, I'm going to have to do that manually now. So we're just going to go back to the main activity where we declared array adapter. Delete that and declare it up here under the static array list. Perfect. Now we should no longer have this error here. Great. Love to see that. Now we need to make sure that the notes are saved permanently. So we're going to go back to our main activity and create a new shared preferences object. So under the list view here, we are going to go shared preferences. Get our package name. I'm going to go with node private, so only our app can access the notes. And now when we add stuff to shared preferences, there's a couple ways we can do that. We go like this. So we can put string, boolean, float, int, long. What we're going to want to do here is put a string set. That's going to be essentially a set of strings, and I'll show you guys how to do that right now. Actually, let's hold off on this for a second. There's a couple things we need to do first. So we're going to be accessing this set, which is very much like an array list, just used for shared preferences. It's easier to conversion. We're going to be using this in both activities, so we're going to go ahead and make this static. Set of strings. We're going to call this just set. So that's declared now as both a static variable and a global variable. So we're going to need to get the set. That's the first thing we're going to do. Like when the app's open, we're going to try to get all the nodes that were stored in the set, if there are any. So we do that like this. These are the shared preferences we just created. Get string set. We're going to get the note string set and just give it the default value of null, because if it's not created yet, if there's no notes in it, that's what it's going to be. We're going to clear notes because that should remedy this error that when we go back and forth between activities, the new example note gets created. Notes.clear. Remember, this notes is not the one that's saved. That's just our local list. So after notes.clear, we're going to check if our set is equal to null, like this. We're actually going to go if it's not equal to null. It'll work better for this. Set is not equal to null. Sorry, I forgot to write null. Notes.addAll set. So So briefly, I'm going to explain what this is doing. So if set is not null, it has notes in it already. We want to add everything, all the notes that are stored in this set in shared preferences, to our local notes array list, which is stored in the app and will let us display them all to the user. However, if set is null, we're going to need to initialize some stuff so that the user will be able to add new notes. Else, this is where we're going to want to move our example note to. We're also going to have to create set. It's actually called a hash set of strings. We're now going to add all the notes, which at this point will just include example note. And now we're going to want to save this to the shared preferences. So just in case there's anything that was saved there beforehand by some extraneous error, we're going to want to remove all of the notes from shared preferences, so we don't get any things being double saved or triple saved, etc. Now we're going to want to put all the new notes that are in the set to shared preferences. Then remember, we have to apply it. The only other place we're really going to need to access shared preferences would be right here when the notes are being edited. So what we're going to do here is very much the same as what we're doing right here. We're now going to need to get our shared preferences from main activity. We're just going to recreate that down here in the onText change listener. Yep. Okay, do that. We're also going to check if set is equal to null again. So we got here. So this is asking basically if it's my set from main activity, and I'm going to click Alt Enter to say yes. So now that's created set as a static variable again, so I don't have to type in main activity dot like here, like I have to do here. I just refer to it as set. Yeah. One of the nice things about Android Studio is that it does a lot of that stuff for you. We're just going to go create this again. Set is not equal to null. We're going to want to clear it. Great. Now down here, it's literally the same thing that we're doing up here. Right down here. So we're going to copy all this, go over to our editNote.java and throw it in there. Just put another set.clear here just in case. Okay, great. Now that should handle the saving of all our new notes. While we're all here on editNote.java, one little buggy thing I noticed earlier is that I haven't rerun this, so it's not going to have any of our new functionality yet. But whenever you start typing, the keyboard here covers our floating action button. So I did a quick Google search for something that could fix that. And lo and behold, I found this nifty little bit of code right here that will edit the action bar of this activity so that you will be able to show the floating action button in response to where the keyboard is in the app. In our manifest.xml, we're going to want to go find the edit note activity, and under theme, I'm going to paste this little bit in. So what this is going to do is find the soft input mode, which is the soft keyboard, and adjust all the floating action buttons, adjust everything to resize around it. So what this essentially does is when the soft keyboard pops up, it compacts the rest of the view so that you can still see all the other view elements instead of having them hidden by the keyboard. Now, one more thing we need to do is in our main activity under our floating action button. So let's find where that guy is. So right now, all it really does is start a new activity using an intent, but we really want to create a new note doing that. So we're going to have to add a little bit of code in here. We're going to start by just adding a blank text field to the set notes. Now, since a lot of what we're going to be doing here is very much the same as what we're doing when we're editing the text here, we can copy all of this. And just plop it in here under notes.add. Take this guy out for here. So let's run through what we're doing here really quickly. This is not going to work. Okay. So because we're in the floating action button, this is referring to, well, the floating action button on click listener. We're going to need to get the application context. Great, so what we're doing, we're taking the array list notes and adding a blank note to it. We're getting a new instance of shared preferences. We're checking if our set is equal to null. If it is, we're creating a new one. If it's not, we're clearing it so we can add new notes. Now we're going to add all the notes. I think we should all be good thus far. Now, again, so we don't have any double note adding errors. If you want to see what this does after you make the app, you can go ahead and delete this line I'm about to write and every other instance of it and just see how notes are added multiple times. We're going to remove all the notes from shared preferences and apply that. Now, because all the notes are shared locally in a string set, we're going to add all those. Can't forget the little parentheses there. Now we just have to notify the array adapter. Now, you see, this is basically everything. The one more thing we're going to have to do is pass a small extra bit of information to the new activity. Essentially, what node has been created. So we're going to go, let's see what I call this one intent. All right. Intent.put extra note ID. And now let's figure out how are we going to know which note has been created. Well, it's going to be the size of the notes array minus 1 because arrays go, the first one starts at 0 and this is going to be the final one in the set. So it's going to be notes dot size minus 1. Great. So now you can probably see how this will link up seamlessly with what we have over here, which takes the node ID in from when this is started. It gets from the new intent, gets node ID, and then edits the note, saves the note as the user edits it. So the one final thing we're going to need to do to polish off this app is to allow users to delete notes. And we're going to do that by letting them hold down on a list view item and then pop up a little alert that'll let them delete it. So we're going to do that like this. Okay, go to where you have your list view.set on item, click listener. Right below that, we're going to do a new on item long click listener, like this. And now, after that, we're going to need a new adapter view dot on item long click listener, similar to up here, up right here, on item click listener. Perfect. It adds all that in for us. So now we are going to need to build a new alert dialog that will pop up the alert to delete the node. Alert dialog builder, Alt Enter. Work. And now we're going to pass it the context of main activity dot this. Perfect. So alert dialogs take they pass in a few variables that they can use. So the first one is going to be the icon. We're going to set this to the alert dialog icon. It's just the default one, and that's done like this. And there we go. That looks like a little triangle with an exclamation point in the middle. Oops, still can't have that there. We're now gonna set the title to "Are you sure?" So ask the user if they really want to delete the node. I'm gonna set the message. So do you want to delete this item? Set the positive button to yes. Let's make that capital. And if the user clicks yes, we need a new on-click listener for this, and it's done with a dialog interface, because this is a dialog interface. Already anticipates that, and you need to put a little semicolon down there. So on click, we're going to remove, let's call this position. This is again the position, the node. No, this is not the position, I'm sorry. This is the position up here. That's the position of the item that was clicked. And since we're accessing it from an inner method, we're going to need to declare this as final as well. So we're going to need to remove position. And create the shared preferences again. Getting tired of writing this, I'm just going to copy it. And now we're going to use that code again where we check if the set is null. If it is, we create a new hash set. If it's not, we clear it. And then we add all the main activity nodes to set. We remove all the nodes from shared preferences. We add all the new nodes to shared preferences. And then we update the array adapter. It's all the same code we used when the user creates a new node. So, instead of, I'm just going to paste that down here. Oh, Mom. Sorry, guys, that was my mom saying hi. Anyway, so what we need to do here is literally the same thing. So think about this. When you remove the position from nodes right here, the locally saved nodes list is not going to have that node in it anymore. So you then clear the set, add all of the nodes to the set again, which will be minus the one that you just deleted. Remove all the saved nodes from shared preferences, which is the old data set. Add all the new ones, which is going to be minus this guy right here, and then notify your array adapter. So the next thing we're going to have to do is set the negative button. Oh crud, where'd that go? So instead of a semicolon here, I'm sorry, my bad, it's kind of late. We're going to set the negative button. To no, and then null, because we don't want anything to happen here. There's no listener. No. And then we have to, of course, show it. And now we're going to return true. It's not liking this. What did I do wrong here? We don't even really need this in here, so I'm just going to take this out. It's fine, turning void. So anyway, let's go ahead and run this app. I just ran it actually, did a test, pause the video. So what this does now is, let's add a note, let's say, hi there. Ooh, that's one thing we have left to do. So you can also just click the back button here. These will now be saved if you restart the app. If you long press on this and let up, you can click yes to delete it, and you will be able to close the app, open it up, and it'll be gone. So let's just go do that last thing very quickly, where we let the user navigate back to the main activity with this button here, just for simplicity's sake. All the logic and saving notes has really already been done, so we just need to start a new intent and go back to the main activity. Where are you? Floating action button. All right, let's delete this snack bar here. Just paste in code for an intent back to the main activity. And go ahead and run that. And I'm happy to say that is the last thing you need to do on your Notes app. Congrats, guys. So now we can add a note, say hello, and click this guy to go back to the main activity. That's it, we're done. Hope you learned a lot and had a good time doing it.